Hi, this is Robin at Riot Audio. I'm very excited to present to you Impressions. Impressions is a 2-layer granular synthesis instrument with extensive movement capabilities and with a special focus on pads and pulses with organic textures. Instead of the tried and tested approach for granular synthesis, where you have 2 granular streams running alongside each other that are simply mixed together or crossfaded, Impressions has a different approach, which you could call Integrated Granular Synthesis, with one stream with alternating grains from each of the 2 sources. The result is an incredibly synergistic sound picture where the origins of the sources almost disappear. Even with substantially different sound sources, the grains from the 2 sources appear to be very clearly correlated, and that enables us to create some very distinctive, cohesive sound design. Let's dive right in. So when we open Impressions, we're on the first page. On this page, we can see waveform displays for each of the 2 layers, A and B. You can bring up the sound source menu by clicking on the sound source name above the waveform. There are 65 sound sources in 6 categories: percussive, strings long, strings short, textures, and vocal to choose from. There are also 40 slots for user-imported sounds. To import your own sounds, choose a user sound group and drag and drop an audio file into the waveform area. Impressions will automatically recognize the pitch and volume of the sample and adjust the playback accordingly. Below the waveforms are randomize buttons for each layer. Use these to shuffle the sound sources individually for each layer. Be aware that the randomization is controlled and will only apply within the sound source category that the current sample belongs to. This is to ensure that the basic properties of the sounds stay within a usable range. Lower down, we've got the grain ratio slider. This is not a crossfade control, as it would be in a standard 2-layer instrument. Instead, this determines the ratio of grains from each layer to each other, or, to put it differently, their relative frequency. In the middle, the ratio is 1:1, i.e., we get alternating grains from A and B. On either side, the ratio diminishes or is increased, from 1:2 to 1:3, and so on until 1:19, and eventually 0:1. For example, a ratio of 1:3 means 1 grain from the A layer, then 3 grains from B, and repeat. There's also a master volume control here. Sometimes when altering settings under the hood, some gain adjustment is needed. That's what this is for. Let's take a look at the settings page now. On the settings page, we've got 4 main sections: grain settings for each layer, integrated density, smoothness, and envelope settings, and a movement section. For each grain source, we can adjust the width and shape of the individual grains. Smaller width equals shorter grain snippets, while the shape parameter adjusts the slope of attack for each grain, as well as the release, from long and smooth to choppy and square. Pan, sample position, and tuning can be adjusted to be randomized for each grain, from 0 to full randomization. There's also a simple low-pass and high-pass filter for each layer. At the bottom, there are controls for pan focus, tuning, and gain trim. Pan focus adjusts the center of the position in the stereo field, from which randomized pannings are produced, if relevant. Tuning can either be fine or in semitone steps. And there's also an octave control. Lastly, there's a gain trim knob for each grain source, allowing for fine balancing between the different sources. The density control specifies the space between the individual grains, between a few milliseconds to around half a second. Or, to put it another way, the higher up the density control, the more grains will be triggered in a given time segment. Smoothness controls the regularity of the grain triggers. With the slider all the way up, there is no randomization and the grains are triggered at a steady pace. At lower settings, there is a degree of randomization, leading to grains being triggered either quicker or slower. Lower settings give a more natural, organic feel. There is a standard ADSR envelope control with attack, decay, sustain and release. Note, there is only one integrated envelope as the two grain sources combine in a single stream in this engine. Impressions features an extensive array of LFOs and modulation possibilities, which are labelled here as movement. The first movement module operates within the second page. There are 4 LFOs and 1 modulator tab for the mod wheel. For the LFOs, we can choose between sine, triangle, square, sawtooth, and random oscillators. You can also adjust speed here, as well as depth, offset, and direction. For the mod wheel, only direction, depth, and offset are available. LFOs 1 to 3 and the mod wheel modulator have the same possible targets, essentially all the controls on this page, apart from envelope, sample position, and stereo panning randomization depth. Each control can only be modulated by one modulation source, and will be unavailable for other modulators to choose from, if already in use. LFO 4 is a special case. Its function is to modulate LFOs 1 to 3. For example, we might want to have the depth of an LFO applied to a filter change over time. We can use LFO 4 to modulate the depth of LFO 1 for this type of effect. Let's hear a few examples of the movement section in action. On page 3, we have effects and another movement section. The first set of effects are under the umbrella of character. Here we find saturation and degrading. There are 3 saturation types to choose from: tube, tape, and transistor. For each, we can adjust the amount of saturation as well as damping. There are 2 types of audio degrading effects to choose from: worn tape and bit crush. Worn tape introduces wobble, stereo discrepancies, high frequency loss, characteristic of overused old reel-to-reel tape. Bit crush reduces the sample rate and brings in jitter, characteristic of older digital devices and samplers. Frequency, amount and damping, or high frequency roll-off, can be adjusted for both types. The filter and EQ tabs allow access to a standard 3-band parametric EQ with gain and Q adjustment for each band, as well as 3 filters, low pass, band pass and high pass, each with frequency adjustment and on-off switch. For the delay section, you can switch between standard and diffusion delay, which acts almost like a reverb, and between time-based and tempo-synced versions. You can also adjust feedback here. In the reverb section, you can adjust the reverb amount and tail length. The second movement module on the third page operates on all of the effects. As in the first movement section, there are 4 LFOs and 1 modulator tab for the mod wheel. For the LFOs, we can choose between sine, triangle, square, sawtooth, and random oscillators. You can also adjust speed here, as well as depth, offset, and direction. For the mod wheel, only depth, direction, and offset are available. LFOs 1 to 3 and the mod wheel modulator have the same possible targets. Most controls on the effects page, except switches and delay or reverb lengths. LFO 4's function, as in the first movement module, is to modulate LFOs 1 to 3. For example, we might want to create a pulsing change of the depth of a saturation modulator over time. We can use LFO 4 to apply to the depth of LFO 1 to 3 for this type of effect. Let's hear a few examples of the second movement section in action. Impressions comes with 200 presets plus 22 starting points for sound design. The presets come in the categories of atmospheres, basses, chaos, keys, pads, pulses, and vocals. For each of these categories, there are a few starting points to get you started on making your own patches. For more presets, please watch the dedicated preset walkthrough.